Hey guys, so here we are with another one of my stories of the past, and let's see how we go with one of these spontaneous conversations that I come up with from time to time. And the title, if everything goes as planned, is talking about a particular seafood that really had a big impact on me. So and we're going to talk about, as the title says, my incredibly big ego. And have I eliminated that big ego? I don't think so. So anyway, let's talk about a few things. So when I was growing up, we were raised, my brother and I were raised in a family where my father was a professional soccer player. He was captain of a professional soccer team. He was captain of a Sicilian team, level A division, so first level division in Italy. And that's before we migrated to Australia. It's actually the reason we migrated to Australia. So my mother was pregnant with me before, as my father had migrated to Australia. And he was, I believe to this day, that he's probably the first Italian to develop Italian soccer. Unfortunately, it's not one of those things that get recognised much, but maybe one day they'll recognise this fact. No big deal, but that's one of my big ego issues. And but the reason I say this is because, so being competitive, being sort of like, trying to be good at everything, being precise, was really drummed into us. And so my man really drilled my brother and I certain attributes into the athletics, which I believe really helped us with Wing Chun. And I'll get into that more so when I talk about how I met Sifu Paolo Delisio. Now, Sifu Paolo Delisio, I met him around 20 years ago, probably a bit more than that now. And why did he have such a big impact? Well, at that time, it was a really important time because I really wanted to prove, to everyone that, especially in the security field, how important Wing Chun was as a combat system. Because, I was always selected for doing the door. A lot of people didn't like doing door work, being a doorman. And, a lot of times that's where you face a lot of the shit, a lot of the problems. And, to do door work, let's face it, not many people will hire you unless you're one of the big boys. So I was pretty big those days, and regardless of the fact that I was big, I still wanted my Wing Chun to be good. And you guys will know better than me how much hate there is in the Wing Chun world. And of course I was always saying, hey man, but on the street it's different. And everyone's like, ha ha, hee hee, ho ho, yeah, on the street, yeah, what's the difference? Come in the ring and we'll prove it on the ring, come on the mat. And I'm saying, nah, look, I'm not saying nothing to disrespect the ring or the mat, and I used to work a lot of times with people who were in different fighting systems, and they really found it hard doing security work because it's just a completely different ball game, So I really worked hard over many years to show Wing Chun's worth in the security game. And for who does bouncing, like who does inner work, like when you're on the when you're inside a joint, it's hard. But fucking when you're at the door, that's where you have to decide who comes in, who doesn't come in, and you get a lot of shit, right? And in the time that I was doing that, bouncing was illegal. Like, it was only legalized in around 2011, and so for many years it was actually illegal. You were not recognized as an official figure, so we were sort of like considered public relations people that got people in to to dance, right? So we're not even considered a legal figure. So it really made it hard, you know. Things work really strange in Italy. So for people who know what I'm talking about, they knew how it was. And anyway, so I'll getting on with the topic of trying to prove how tough, you know, Wing Chun was, you know, doing security work, doing the door, and the fact that I was big and strong, whatever. You know, I had this really, really big ego. And regardless of the fact that I grew up in Australia, came back to Italy later on, we would do a lot of seminars, you know, Wing Chun seminars, in a region of Italy called Livorno, right? And so, you know, you would have a lot of the top masters coming in around from Europe and different parts of the world, and this is through the Leung Ting Association. And of course, we had the fortune of, you know, Grandmaster Kernspec bringing in a lot of top people. So, yeah, it was good. We had often met, you know, Sifu Paolo Delisio. We had met, you know, a lot of the top-ranking masters that came in from the castle, Langen's Hill Castle. And, you know, we even had people that had done military ops and stuff like that. They were really, really, really cool people, very tough people and stuff. But then we'd have people that would come in from other countries with their students, and they would do seminars and stuff. And I guess what would piss me off was that, you know, my Italian brothers sort of like would, you know, mix in with them. I would never like my Italian brothers sort of like getting picked on. So often more than not, I would be sticking up for them or stepping in and saying, you know, hey man, you know, try it with me. Or, you know, my ego would get in the way because I would always want to defend my Italian brothers, because even though I sound like an Australian yobbo, the reality is I'm Italian born, and I stick up for my race like any Englishman would do for his brothers, etc., etc. That's just the way I was, right? And in this occasion, you know, I'd met Sifu Paolo many times, and at the time I was weighing about good 102 kilos, and I was really pretty strong. I was bench pressing, it wasn't my maximum capacity, but I was bench pressing 155 kilos 5 times, doing the squat 150 kilos 10 times, laying squat on the back 425 kilos 5 times, yeah, behind the neck press 120 kilos about 8 times, you know, stuff like that. So like, I wasn't obsessively strong, like maybe I could have done more, but you know, I wanted to keep within the 5 to 10 reps range, keep myself fairly powerful. And I would do that with a lot of drilling, you know, combine that with a lot of drilling and a lot of sprinting. So I had a fairly explosive like, you know, nature with my fighting abilities, a lot of drilling, and I was fairly powerful at the same time, you know. So I combined those 3 elements. And so, you know, there was a period that we had the Chinese come in from Hong Kong. And it was just a period there that when they'd come, they sort of like started slapping around everybody in the seminar. You know, I didn't particularly like it. I don't like anybody slapping around my Italian brothers, or anybody for that, gratuitously, you know. I can understand elderly masters doing it. Like, if you ever see footage of me with people who are elderly, you know, I'm always very passive, and out of respect, I think, like anybody, you know, they sort of like, you're learning something, you know what I'm saying? I think it's an act of disrespect if you were to oppose any resistance to an elderly master who's teaching you, because an elderly teacher who enters you is never doing that as a sign of disrespect. There's a big difference. So for me, it's a bit of an honor, right? But if you have a young one who's sort of like going around slapping everybody, you know, I find that a bit disrespectful and I get pissed off. Anyway, so I had a bit of a clash with one of them, And all the young ones that were sleeping around my Italian brother says, nah, fuck it, I'm not putting up with it. And so I had a clash with a lot of these guys, right? At the end of the seminar, Sifu Paolo comes up to me and he says, all right, now that you've proven that you can beat everybody up, he says, you're going to start learning some real Wing Chun? And I looked at him and I said, why? Up to now, after all these years, what the fuck do you think I've been doing, you know? It was years ago. He says, look, you know, if you like, you know, after the seminar, spend some time with me. And so I did. And so it was a pretty amazing experience, because this guy is bigger than me, he's taller than me, right? And everybody sort of like considered him like the Qui-Gon of our organisation at the time. He was very soft, very quietly spoken, never proved anything, always quiet, you know, always showed very simple stuff, you know. So very easy to underevaluate him, and it's very hard to sort of like hold anything against him, like, you know, in a bad way, because he's a very likable person, right? And I said, sure, you know. So we started to talk and we started to roll. He said, well, you know, when you're ready, you know, start pressing me, start doing what you want. That was a pretty amazing experience, because it was the first time someone who was actually physically bigger than me was, he wasn't a person who was athletically prepared, by the way. He wasn't, actually, he was a little bit chubby at the time, right? And I was pretty shocked. It was a pretty amazing experience. He didn't really have that much trouble shifting me around and absorbing in my strength, my power. And I got to admit, that was the first time that I really took a different attitude to Wing Chun, you know, and saw something completely different. It was the first time. And so I thought, wow, this is different, something I'd never felt before. And it was from then that, you know, I started talking to him, I started doing a few lessons with him, and he really changed. He had that initial, like, I talk a lot about my brother as well. My brother has impacted me in a very different way, similarly in the same directions. But let's say Paolo was the guy who sort of made that physical impact, if it was the first person to make that physical impact, right? Because physically, he said to me, you're stronger than me, but you don't know how to really use your strength. And he says to me, no one's denying that you're a good fighter, but that's not what Wing Chun's all about. And wow, and that was like close to 20 years ago, right? And so, you know, sure, that was a big ego massacre. And so it was like rebuilding blocks. It's like re-looking at your Tan Sao, Cham Sao, your Yijing King Yang Ma, your structure, and rebuilding it all again, you know. And to me, sure, at first, it was I was a bit shell-shocked at first, and then after a fair few lessons with him, you know, then there's another thing to say. Every time I would go to lessons with Sifu Paolo, it's like getting my brain, right, and just sort of like just squeezing it out. And it's like, I'd be on the train all the way home. It's like, you know, my brain was more worn out than my body, you know. And that was the impact. To me, you have to have a very, very, very particular mindset to follow. And it took me, in the end, I have to be honest with him, I love the guy dearly, and I think he's absolutely brilliant. and he was definitely one of the first people I felt internal energy, like something internal that I thought, this is not normal, right? He was definitely the first person. He was very generous in his teachings, very generous in his approach, and didn't hide anything really. So but it's for me, I'm talking about me because of the maybe because of the physicality I have, because I put so much physical effort. It was for me at the time very hard to mentally focus on every detail, because you need to have a high level of mental focus and concentration to fully develop internal work, right? But I will say this, I don't weigh 100 and 203 kilos anymore. I weigh around between 80 to 82. And the thing that he did tell me, which became true, was he said to me, I guarantee you this, he said, you take this path and you'll become much stronger than what you were before. And I have to say that is true. I use my body, I use my concentration, I use my, if you want to call them, internal abilities, in a much more developed and concentrated way than much better than what I could 20 years ago. That's definitely the truth. So, my first impact into that direction, I definitely have to thank Sifu Paolo Delisio. Okay, so there you go, a bit of history for you, and I'm sure you can find him on our website, and yeah, he's always teaching. He's not a guy who advertises much. He's pretty quiet, but he has a school near Rome, and he's on the same lines of what my brother teaches and other people teaches, So there's not many people that really teaches that sort of Wing Chun. So there you go, good stuff. Hope you enjoyed that story.